Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and Marvel Studios has confirmed that the Netflix Marvel series are canon. Their history officially part of the sacred timeline, which plays a big role in the Echo series and presumably in the upcoming Daredevil Born Again. This is a huge admission by the studio, which has historically been reluctant to embrace the Netflix Daredevil and Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, Defenders, Punisher, all these series as existing within the MCU continuity, even if these shows all took steps to align with the events of the MCU in the years following the Battle of New York. And in the heads of many, if not most of the people who watched and enjoyed those shows, they were part of the MCU. So for a lot of them, this confirmation was like, well, yeah, duh, we already knew that. And hopefully it brings a bit of vindication to a certain subset of angry people on Twitter. But for those of you who didn't watch or maybe don't remember all 13 seasons of those Netflix shows from 2015 to 2019, what all is included in this widened landscape? Like in terms of precise runtime, how much bigger is the MCU now than what some viewers previously thought it was? And what loose ends did these shows leave us that future Marvel Studios titles will now be expected to pick up? By the way, all 5 episodes of Marvel's Echo are being broken down on this channel with amazing detail by Jessica Clements. And guys, I am learning so much from these videos. I am completely blown away by the depth Jess is going to. Give these videos a watch and wish her a happy belated birthday. Okay, before the episodes of Echo were dropped, executive producer Brad Winderbaum, who is Marvel's head of streaming, television, and animation, he's part of Kevin Feige's Inner Circle brain trust, he made this confirmation to Screen Rant.
Now, I have a question about Daredevil. Is everything that happened on the Netflix series a part of the sacred timeline, or is it not?
So I can say that we've been up until this point, we've been a little bit cagey about what's sacred timeline, what's not sacred timeline. That was born of, frankly, a period at the studio where we were like, we have to stick the landing with Avengers. Sure. You know, it was another part of the company developing the Netflix stuff. We were aware of what they were doing. They were aware of what we were doing. But it was a lot. It was a lot to balance anyway. But now that, you know, some time has passed, now that we see how well integrated the stories are, I think that I personally, Brad Winderbaum, would be confident in saying it is part of the sacred time.
Okay, so spoiler warning for all of the Echo series coming up. The series did double down on the Netflix continuity with preseason promos using footage of Kingpin from the Netflix Daredevil series, and in Echo Episode 4, Wilson Fisk offered as a gift to Maya Lopez the hammer he used to kill his father when Wilson Fisk was a boy. And in Episode 5, we saw flashbacks in Wilson's memory of him standing in front of a painting and remembering his childhood trauma of staring at the paint peeling from the wall while his father abused his mother. To be clear, the hammer is not the same hammer, and the room where young Wilson stared at the peeling paint was not his bedroom with a Yankee pennant. In Daredevil, it was a room adjacent to the dining room. Now, I would say, hey, maybe the paint throughout the apartment was chipping, but it was that specific wall that seemed to haunt Wilson Fisk into feeling like he was a rabbit in a snowstorm throughout his life. And I'm sure these details are going to be debated endlessly in certain corners online, but the implication is that Wilson Fisk beating his father to death with a hammer is a canon event to the sacred timeline of the MCU, and the Hawkeye series focused on Fisk's cufflinks, and Wilson Fisk wears these cufflinks because they belong to his father, and his mother gave them to him after they both moved the corpse. I know. So taking Brad Winderbaum at his word that Marvel Studios now considers the Netflix shows to be canon, and that debate is behind us, what does this mean exactly? From 2015 to 2019, Netflix released 13 seasons, all of which interconnected with each other and presented themselves as taking place on the street level of the MCU. Daredevil Season 1 released in April 2015, Jessica Jones Season 1 released in November 2015, Daredevil Season 2 released in March 2016, Luke Cage Season 1 released in September 2016, Iron Fist Season 1 released in March 2017, The Defenders, which was an 8-episode crossover series, released in August 2017, The Punisher spinoff Season 1 released in November 2017, Jessica Jones Season 2 released in March 2018, Luke Cage Season 2 released in June 2018, Iron Fist Season 2 released in September 2018, and around this time, Netflix actually started to cancel these shows, so we got Daredevil Season 3, its final season, released in October 2018, The Punisher Season 2 released in January 2019, and Jessica Jones Season 3 released in June 2019. And I don't think people properly realize how much runtime this amounts to, compared to the runtime people previously understood the MCU to be. I actually started breaking this down in my deep dive video about Marvel's removed storylines last year, and how much total runtime increased drastically from 2019 to 2021 and then to 2022. So with the help of John and Brandon and a handy spreadsheet created by Reddit user YXKUO, we went back through everything. So Marvel Phase 1's total runtime of films from 2008 through 2012 amounted to 12 hours and 24 minutes. You know, Iron Man, Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, Cap, and the first Avengers film. Marvel Phase 2 total runtime of films from 2013 to 2015, and this isn't including the Marvel one-shots or the ABC shows or the Netflix shows, that amounted to 12 hours and 38 minutes. Marvel Phase 3's total runtime of films from 2016 through 2019, this is just the MCU movies during this time, 24 hours and 57 minutes. This is when they started doing 3 movies a year, and then Endgame was like super long. Marvel Phase 4, though, with streaming series added to the mix, 2021 through 2022, 56 hours and 46 minutes. And now, starting 2023 with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania through this current week in January 2024, Marvel Phase 5 total runtime so far, 24 hours and 52 minutes. So the grand total of runtime of what has previously been considered MCU canon, all the MCU films and Disney Plus streaming shows, special presentations, anything overseen by Kevin Feige's vision of Marvel Studios amounted to a total of 131 hours and 37 minutes. That's about 5.5 days of content. And if that sounds like a lot, it is, but hold on to your butts, because we totaled the full runtime of the Netflix shows. Remember, 13 seasons, folks, and oftentimes these are 13 episodes per season, 50 meaty minutes per episode, as opposed to like Disney Plus, where it's like, oh, we're gonna do 6 episode seasons, and it's gonna be like 35 minutes, and then 10 minutes of that, it's gonna be the credits. So if you were to add just the shows where Daredevil, Charlie Cox appears, and so far only he and Vincent D'Onofrio, Wilson Fisk have been confirmed to return for future Marvel Studios titles, maybe Jon Bernthal as well, but Daredevil seasons 1 through 3 and The Defenders makes up 41 hours and 12 minutes of additional runtime, and if you were to add all the interconnected Netflix Marvel titles, Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, Punisher, Defenders, Iron Fist, Daredevil, all of it comes to 142 hours and 25 minutes, which is about 6 full days. So through this annexation, if you want to call it that, Marvel Studios has effectively more than doubled its runtime of canonical storytelling. It added to its current 5.5 days of stories another 6 days. It's the Louisiana Purchase of cinematic expansions. Thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. A new year is a great excuse for finally tackling the stuff that you put off last year. And if one of the things you've been putting off until 2024 is taking proper care of your mental health, BetterHelp can help you get started. And hey, no judgment for waiting. Starting therapy can be hard, and the right therapist for you might not be in your area, and some people struggle with the face-to-face interaction of therapy. With BetterHelp, you can have your therapy sessions as a phone call, as a video chat, or even via messaging if you prefer that. Whatever is the most comfortable version of therapy for you. Just click the link in the description and answer a few questions about what you're looking for from therapy and what your preferences are. BetterHelp will then match you with a therapist from their network that's right for you. If you don't really fit with that therapist, which is a common thing with therapy, you can easily switch to a therapist for no additional cost without stressing about insurance, who is in your network, or anything like that. If you think you might benefit from therapy, consider BetterHelp. Click the link in the description or visit betterhelp.com/newrockstars. Clicking that link helps support this channel and also gets you 10% off your first month of BetterHelp, so you can connect with a therapist to see if it helps you. Now you could say, well, hey, Marvel Studios has already been doing this by bringing in Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield in Spider-Man No Way Home, bringing in Patrick Stewart, Charles Xavier, and Anson Mount, Black Bolt, and Doctor Strange's Multiverse of Madness, Kelsey Grammer, Beast in the Marvels, Hugh Jackman, Wolverine in the upcoming Deadpool 3. Sure, that's all true, but those appearances have so far been considered multiversal crossovers from different universes that are separate from the MCU continuity. Wilson Fisk Kingpin has so far been implied to have been part of the MCU sacred timeline since the beginning. That's what makes this latest confirmation so significant. So what happened in these additional 142.5 hours? What storylines were left unresolved that the MCU will now have to address? Well, there is so much to go through, and trust me, New Rockstars is going to get to all of these shows on the channel in the next couple years. But for Daredevil, season 3 showed Matt Murdock battling Wilson Fisk as Kingpin unleashed Ben Poindexter, an expert marksman with mental health struggles, to impersonate Daredevil and destroy Daredevil's reputation. Murdock exposed Fisk's involvement in the death of Poindexter's love, which sends Poindexter on a killing spree against everybody, and he actually ends the season receiving bionic augmentation to become Bullseye. It's crazy, and that's where it leaves off. But the more satisfying conclusion is when Murdock corners Wilson Fisk with evidence that could get Vanessa in prison. Fisk, after a bloody brawl, lets himself get taken in. So in addition to Daredevil season 3 ending with Fisk incarcerated, Daredevil Born Again has recast Vanessa from Ayelet Zurer to Sandrine Holt. So that's gonna have to be explained, or maybe it just never will be. Luke Cage ends with perhaps the biggest cliffhanger of these series. Mariah Dillard had left the ownership of Harlem's Paradise nightclub to Luke Cage, who appoints himself the Sheriff of Harlem, part of Mariah's plot to drag Luke into her world of corruption. Luke's friend DW even calls him Luke Trump. Yeah, that's right, a lot of these shows reference Trump and American electoral politics, which Echo also kind of did with that Make America Skate Again sign. Meanwhile, the MCU has established fictional presidents like Matthew Ellison, President Ritson from Secret Invasion. In Luke Cage, Mahershala Ali played Cornell Stokes, and now Mahershala Ali is going to be playing Blade in the MCU. Mariah was played by Alfred Woodard, who also played the grieving mother Miriam Sharp in Captain America Civil War. Then again, Gemma Chan played both Minerva in Captain Marvel and Cersei in Eternals. Michelle Yeoh played Alita Ogord in Guardians Volume 2 and Ying Nan in Shang-Chi. So, you know, double castings aren't entirely unprecedented. In the Punisher series, season 2 shows Frank Castle finally scoring vengeance against Billy Russo Jigsaw and the gang responsible for his family's death. His ally, hacker David Lieberman Micro, is played by Evan Moss Backrack from The Bear, now rumored to have a role in the upcoming Fantastic Four. In the Iron Fist series, Daniel Rand gives up the mantle of the Iron Fist to Colleen Wing, who becomes a New York vigilante in her own right, channeling her power through her katana. Meanwhile, Danny and Ward go to Asia on a quest, and months later, it seems like Danny has regained some of the powers of the Iron Fist. But the fullest conclusion was perhaps on Jessica Jones, who spent all of season 3 trying to rein in her former best friend and sister figure Trish, who has now become the violent super vigilante of Hellcat. Trish gets incarcerated at the Raft, and the series ends with Jessica headed to Mexico, but the voice of David Tennant's amazing villain of Kilgrave returns in her mind, taunting her for running, and so Jessica decides to stay in New York, presumably to keep working cases for her alias investigations. Now, the Defenders season was really a middle season for most of these series, like in between 1 and 2 for most of them, in between season 2 and 3 for Daredevil. In the show, we saw the heroes joining forces under Matt Murdock's mentor, Stick, in order to fight the Hand, which was an evil organization led by Sigourney Weaver as Alexandra. Their goal was to resurrect Elektra Natchios as Black Sky. It dealt with a massive pit beneath New York City. This is really the closest any of these shows came to an Avenger-level threat, in my opinion. Most of the time, what made these shows great is that they were dealing with rogue killers on the loose in Hell's Kitchen and the broader New York area. And the fact that these heroes dealt primarily with street-level conflicts and legal cases makes them pretty easy to fit into the history of the MCU. That's how the producers of these shows intended them to be, and I think Fisk referencing his past with his dad and the hammer and the peeling paint on the wall, and we'll see, maybe Matt Murdock referencing his past with the chemical spill, his father's boxing, his tutelage from Stick, that might be as far into their backstories these Disney Plus MCU shows go. But remember, there are so many side characters and subplots to fill all those 13 episode seasons. And if Daredevil Born Again tries to do what Echo did and flashback to dates like 2007, 2008, 2015, or whatever that was, so much was going on during Daredevil and Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, Defenders, and Punisher during the years of 2015, 2016, 2017, Fisk being incarcerated sometimes, but really the fact that Fisk was an unknown power broker in New York City at other times whose grunts would violently kill themselves upon giving up just his name. How could he also be a public figure that anybody knows at any time before that? It's just inevitably going to do those series a disservice for the Disney Plus MCU shows to try to revisit or rehash that history too much. In my opinion, the smartest move to make would be to flashback to an unexplored era of the MCU that's been untouched by anything, including the Netflix series, 2018 to 2023, The Blip. Remember, Echo's father died during the Blip. We got to revisit that history when Ronan killed him. These shows should go back to those years and tell new stories about what Fisk and Murdock, Frank Castle, and the rest were doing in the New York City area, where boats were moored at Liberty Island, cars were abandoned at City Field. I want to hear Wilson Fisk screaming from the Brooklyn Bridge at the whales in the Hudson. And by the way, for the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. diehards who want their division of Marvel storytelling from the ABC run to be confirmed as canon next, or just be confirmed because in their head it already is canon, and you have an argument. If you add up all 7 seasons of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., we're talking 22 episode seasons there, plus 2 seasons of Agent Carter, plus that 1 season of Inhumans, that would add an additional 114 hours and 38 minutes of runtime. You also got the Marvel series Runaways on Hulu, 3 seasons of that, which would bring an additional 26 hours and 32 minutes of runtime. And then you also have the Marvel series Cloak and Dagger on Freeform, 2 seasons of that, an additional 14 hours and 4 minutes. We could keep going with this, but just with the ones I mentioned, this is a growing multiverse. So in the recent MCU timeline book, which omits the Netflix shows, the ABC shows, and all other Marvel continuities, leaving them out of the sacred timeline, Kevin Feige's wink wink note in that book that other timelines could in the future be retconned in, potentially tripled the size of the MCU as we know it. Let me know your thoughts on all this down below. You can subscribe to all 3 channels in the New Rockstars network. Please follow me at EA Voss. Support us by grabbing some merch from nerdriot.shop. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.